All right, guys, we're back after a day off because of the stomach bug. Got me bad. So we're back. Going to be talking about the changes soon once we give a little bit more time for everyone to join in. Obviously, big announcement. What we talked about a few days ago, that January 15th meeting for the NCAA to vote on some potential changes. Some of them didn't go through yet, but one big change that'll be a big benefit for pretty much every school, or for every school. And then also big announcement of what may be coming to NIL and how that's going to impact college sports as well. Zach, what's up, man? First guy in the chat. Afternoon stomach bug is no joke. Yeah, so hit my 3-year-old like 5 or 6 days ago, maybe 5 days ago. And he was up all night throwing up, and then about a day and a half later it hit my 1-year-old. He had a pretty mild case of it, and then it hit my wife, and she was down for the count for 2 days. And then I thought I had kind of dodged it because I was, for 4 or 5 days I was fine. And then yesterday, actually not just yesterday, but about the second half of Wednesday, about 2 p.m., 3 p.m., I started feeling bad. And then yesterday was just, not fun. Feeling a lot better though today. Thank God. It seems like it was for pretty much all of us, it was about a 24-hour thing. So thankful for that. Canes, good afternoon. What's up, man? Canes, and we're going to talk about Canes on the ground. One of our on the ground insiders letting us know how Miami's practice looked. Their captain's practice, right, Canes? So no coaches involved until, I think you said Monday, right? Canes, their first official practice. And just think about that, guys. So for most teams, Monday, like this coming week, will be their first official team practice. So we're talking the 20th of January. And what that means is that your favorite college team has less than a month to practice and get things squared away. So let's just see here. And we're gonna talk about this first because this will go into the new changes, right? That are coming. So your first game, like for example, Georgia Tech's first game is February 14th. So you have 24 days to get going. 24 days. And remember, your Mondays are off. Teams will be practicing on the weekends. They'll be doing inter squads on the weekends because they have to. And so Canes, luckily that won't be the case next season. That's to the update you're going to talk about. Right. Okay, so we're going to get into it now that Canes has spilled the beans. We're going to get into it. So let's pull up this article from D1 Baseball, and I'll zoom in for you guys. Okay, so we're going to read through this. On Thursday, the NCAA Division I Council approved legislation allowing college baseball programs to ramp up their preparation time to 27 practices over a 35-day period, leading up to opening day. The rule, adopted by the council at its annual convention this week, is a significant increase over the previous rule in place, which was essentially 18 practices in 21 days. So like I said, you had like 21 days to get ramped up for the season. 18 practices. And remember, 18 practices, so let's say 6 a week. I mean, that's 3 weeks. And your starters, right? Your starters need to be getting ramped up to, hopefully by opening day, they can go 6 innings. You don't see that happen a lot anymore. I mean, even back when I was playing, your Friday night guy, Mark Pope, our Friday guy, my freshman year. I mean, he went 9 innings, complete game. But everyone's a lot more kind of playing it safe with their arms because they don't want to. And again, those early, especially for your Power 4 schools, those early weekends out of conference are generally not as good competition. So you feel like you don't want to burn your starter for 9 innings opening weekend or the second weekend or even the third weekend. You want to get your bullpen arms some innings as well. But this change, you have 9 more practices. So you basically have another week. You have another basically 2 weeks of practices. That's going to allow you to just a little bit more extra time. Again, it's not like a massive amount, but that is the issue with college baseball. That when it starts, is that because kids are just getting back to school and the first week of January, you just don't really have that much time to ramp up. So this was something that was desperately needed. The adopted legislation will go into effect on August 1st of this year. Canes, you always have to take into account whether this time of year is bad in all location. Miami, it rains now. Up north, it's cold and snowing. Teams needed this. Yeah, 100%. Especially down in Florida, Canes, you're right. I mean, this is like, the issue in Florida is like everyone thinks, oh, it's super sunny and hot and baseball weather is great. But like you said, I mean, those rainstorms just come up out of nowhere and all of a sudden you're practicing indoors. And how many practices are you missing because of rain? Up here in Georgia, this next coming week, it's going to be, the lows are going to be in the like 15, 14. So it's not like, I think everyone assumes like, oh, you're in the Southeast, and I get it. Like it's definitely warmer in the Southeast, but like if you're not in Florida or like the southern parts of Georgia or the southern parts of Alabama and et cetera, you're still getting pretty cold weather. I mean, you're in the 20s for some of these practices, and even opening weekend, it ain't going to be a breeze. I can tell you that much. Zach says it's supposed to snow here in Panama City, Florida next week. Yeah, it's potentially going to snow around Atlanta as well. So like Kane said, I mean, let's take those 18 practices that used to be the rule and is the rule still for this season. A good portion of those practices are going to be, you're going to have to go indoors because it's either going to be too cold or it's going to be raining, etc. So this was desperately needed. The increase in ramp-up time comes at an excellent time for programs in the Division I baseball landscape. Rosters will soon scale back from the 40-man they currently are to 34-man rosters for the 26th season. That means staying healthy, especially for pitchers, is paramount entering the season and beyond. Division I coaches have long complained about the lack of ramp-up time in our sport. In the professional ranks, pitchers have a significant amount of time to get specialized treatment to ready for the season. Meanwhile, college baseball has had strict and antiquated rules that don't have a pitcher's health in mind from a timing standpoint. This adoption by Division I Council does take that into account, but more work is needed as it pertains to pitchers. Yeah, I agree. I mean, like, listen, guys, this is a big step up, from 18 practices to 27 practices. But still, think about it. In spring training in professional baseball, most pitchers and catchers are getting there, let's say for big league camp, I mean, you're getting there around beginning to mid-February if you're trying to get there a little bit early. And now you have February, March, to beginning of April to get ramped up. So you basically have 2 months to get ramped up. And most teams have their pitchers show up even earlier, to facilitate extra timing to do that. And college baseball, even with these extra practices now, you still don't have a lot of time, but it's better than it was. Today's approval by the council is a big step in the right direction. I think this is a really positive change for our sport. LSU coach Jay Johnson told D1 Baseball, it will help decrease injuries by allowing increased time to ramp up for the season. Also, the best way for the players to develop is to have more time on the field with coaches, and this rule change provides that, he added. It is a win for everyone, and we look forward to the additional time to prepare in January 2026. Yeah, so I mean, this is obviously great for pitchers, guys, but like Jay says, it's also really good just overall because, again, like I've told you guys, usually those position battles, most of them are cleared up in the fall, but you're also still evaluating guys in the early spring. And if there's a couple positions where two guys have been the standout and you're not really sure who's kind of won the job, the early spring is where you win the job in those first couple weekends in season. So this gives you 9 extra practices of inter squads to get to see if the two guys that have kind of stood out, if one of them will take the next step. And so again, it's just a win-win for everyone. The Division I Council did not move on a proposal to increase the number of allowable fall games from 2 to 4. That proposal was tabled. However, coaches have told D1 Baseball over the past few weeks that there's not a massive need, at least for now, to increase fall games. They'd take it, but it's far from a deal breaker or anything of great importance. So basically, listen, majority of coaches that I've talked to, especially at ABCA, I mean, they're 100% in favor of more fall games between, off-campus competition, so other schools. But they're not going to break up this deal because they didn't get 2 extra fall games. And they feel like that's probably going to come maybe next year. And this was a bigger change needed than the extra fall games, because that extra ramp-up time, especially for your arms, is just way too important. The next legislative item to watch stems from the American Baseball Coaches Association convention earlier this month in Washington, D.C. There, Division I coaches agreed to propose a 38-man roster entering fall workouts. The idea behind this cap would be to eliminate the possibility of a team bringing in 40-plus players and then cutting them at the end of the fall, leaving those players with nowhere to go. That still needs to be approved by the NCAA, but should receive strong support given its benefit to the student-athlete. What already has been approved by the conferences is capping the roster at 34 players by December 1st. So the consensus feeling around the sport is that this 38-man roster cap is going to go into effect at some point, probably even for next season. And like it says in the article, guys, that's beneficial because even with the 34-player cut at December 1st, you still could have big schools bringing in 50 guys, right? That did not stop them from bringing in way more guys than 34. But the 38-man cap is there to prevent the over-recruiting. Because that 34-man roster, again, would teams be bringing in as many as they typically did? Probably not, but you could still, like the article said, you could still bring in 40-plus, and those players know, hey, we're going to have to cut down to 34. And if they're willing to go, they can go. With this 38-man roster cap, you can only have 4 guys over the 34. So you're not going to have to cut 10, 12, 14 guys on December 1st, which is good as well. Again, because a lot of players, again, we've talked about this, guys, that a lot of players, like, what you're getting into. You know how big the recruiting classes are. It's not the coach's fault when you commit to a school and you're going to be one of 50 guys on campus and there's 34-man roster. But some players, again, they're not super educated about the process and how everything works. And they just think, everything's going to go right for me. Nothing bad's going to happen. And they ultimately get in a terrible situation. And 3 months later, after they get cut, they're like, man, why did I make that decision? This is going to prevent a lot of those bad decisions by players. So it's a good thing. For now, college coaches can breathe a sigh of relief that there will now be more ramp-up time in our sport. It's more important than ever, given the always changing landscape of college athletics. So let's think about this, guys. When you're building up your starters in January, right? Because again, your bullpen guys are going to be fine, pretty much, because they're going to in the early spring they're going to be going 1 inning, 2 inning stints. But your starters are going to start out, maybe the first inter squad they throw 2 innings, 3 innings, and then you build them up to 3 or 4, and then after that, maybe the third time they go out there 5 or 6. So this gives you essentially 4 to 5 weeks of practices, so you can do that steady increase. Whereas before, you had 18 practices, so you basically had maybe 3 opportunities for your starters to get innings, and so you're kind of hoping that you're able to build them up enough. This gives you that extra week and a half, 2 weeks to really slowly ramp up. So maybe that first week you can go 2 innings. Next week you go 3, next week you go 4, next week you go 5, and then ultimately you're getting close to the season and you can kind of figure out what you want to do from there. But it gives players the ability just to kind of slow down that ramp up. And especially, here's the important thing, most teams are playing lesser competition to start, especially the Power Fours. But there are some of those early season kind of round robin tournaments, like the one in Houston and a few others, where you're playing against top 25 teams, all 4 teams in the tournament. And so those are games you have to win for overall RPI, tournament placement, etc. So you're going to want your guys, your starters, built up at least to go 5 or 6 innings in those games to win. So this really helps those teams that are in that situation where you're going to have a couple easy weekends theoretically. Again, in baseball, anything can happen. But in those early series and tournament type weekends, you kind of want to be able to build your players and your pitchers up enough. And again, you're getting more at bats for your hitters. So your hitters are going to be more likely to go into season feeling good about their swing, because it's very common for guys to come back from the winter, especially those guys who may not have access to getting a lot of live BP and seeing live pitches over the winter, and just get more at bats. So they're just more acclimated and ready to go into the season, instead of having, if you, and this is the other thing, guys. Let's say you have 3 weeks of practices. You're not inter squatting in every one of those practices. You just can't from a pitching perspective. You don't want to throw all your arms every day. So some of those days are going to be defensive work. You're going to be working on your bunt plays, just normal practices with BP and everything like that. Your inter squad days, usually you take an early, you try to get your guys to the field early, take BP, maybe do a little defense work, and then you go straight into the inter squads. Well, your other practices, you're really locking down your defensive plays, your bunt coverage, everything like that, so that everyone is on the same page going into the season as well. So I think next year, what you'll see, especially early on in the year, typically, you have some teams that start slow, and I think one factor of that is that you just don't get a lot of practices to get your hitters acclimated and your pitchers ready to go. So you're like, man, why is this team starting so cold? Like LSU, for example, last year. Like Auburn typically starts pretty slow. Now you have more time to really get your team going. And so, you could see that all of a sudden the highly ranked teams just are coming out of the gate a lot better. Again, that's just my guess. But anytime hitting, I think what's overlooked in this is obviously the benefit for the pitchers and ramping up. But in hitting, you're not ready. Let's say you haven't done a lot of live BP over the winter. So for the last month and a half, 2 months, because your fall practice ended in early November, you haven't really done a lot of live hitting. I mean, you're coming back in basically at zero. In those first couple weeks of inter squads, you're just trying to get your timing down. You're trying to get your tracking down right. So this is a huge benefit for hitters as well, because hitting is something where you need 2 or 3 weeks to really get going and feel good about your swing and make some adjustments that you need to make that, you're not seeing the ball as well, etc. So this is going to be a big benefit for hitters as well. And like I said, I expect next year you're going to see a lot more hitters come out the gate looking good, because they get these extra 2 weeks of practices where they get to track more, they get to make more adjustments, get acclimated again to velocity and their timing, etc. So overall, going to be a big benefit for hitters as well, not just pitchers. I think the crux of this was to get the pitchers more ramp-up time. But again, this is going to be a benefit for every player, not just the pitchers. I mean, I can tell you as a hitter, man, you come back from that November winter break, and you're not. Listen, in the fall, you're practicing every day. You're facing inter squad. You're facing live arms, so you feel good about yourself. Those first couple weeks of spring coming back, you're kind of hoping that what you did in the fall, if you were having success, kind of shows back up. And a lot of times in hitting, right away it doesn't show back up, and you got to kind of figure it out again and get going again. So these extra weeks of practices are going to be big time for a lot of players. Okay, so I'm curious to think what you guys think of that. as far as the extra practice time. I did see some guys on Twitter yesterday implying that this was going to cause more arm injuries. And I just think that comes from a lack of understanding of how ramp ups work and how most college pitching coaches now are very astute at building their arms up and not overdoing it and everything like that. Do you think college is from Zach? Do you think college baseball should get one preseason weekend? I don't know. I don't think it's a bad idea, Zach, but this is the thing. It comes down to money, right? Our school's going to want to pay, like, especially because early in the year, especially a preseason weekend, it's going to have to be schools traveling from the Northeast down to the Southeast into warm weather climates. So I don't see that happening just because I don't think schools are going to want to pay an extra weekend of travel and food and everything. It's just going to make expenses go up. It's not a bad idea. I just don't see it happening. Canes, it's what we need. Just look at what Miami is doing. We have to have captains practice unofficial scrimmages just to get our players extra time to ramp up. Yeah, exactly. I mean, you know, and that's a creative way for schools to kind of get around the rule. Coaches aren't there, but you know, essentially the coaches, wink, wink, have kind of set up the lineups and kind of have told the players what to do and everything, but they just can't be there for an official practice. So it's just like, you know, why don't we just give these guys extra time? But there, you know, we do have some more stuff to talk about, some new changes coming as well that are big time. But I want to stay on this topic for a little bit. You know, those first 3 weekends, just remember, guys, I mean, the first 3 weekends, again, as a Power 4 school or a really good mid-major, I mean, you're looking to, you know, sweep those weekends. But they're also essentially like getting you ready. A lot of coaches look at those weekends. So especially, let's look at your normal mid-major schools. A lot of them are going down to play Power 4 schools. They're playing big-time schools early. There's 2 factors for that. One is, let's say you're a mid-major, you go down and you dominate the first 2 or 3 weekends against some big competition. Well, you've just set yourself up strength of schedule-wise, RPI-wise, for a potential NCAA berth in the tournament. But also, you're facing better competition than you're going to face in conference, so you're preparing your team and acclimating them by facing more difficult competition. You're seeing a lot of mid-majors do that now, where they're kind of just Most mid-majors know their only route to the NCAA baseball tournament is by winning their conference. The other route is very rare, but to get an at-large bid if you have a really big year as a mid-major. So if you go down and face Power 4 competition, top 25 teams, and let's say you win one weekend, lose one weekend, win the other, and so now you're 5-4, well, you just won against 2 top 25 schools. You're in better position for an at-large berth if you do really well in conference, but don't win the conference championship. So and even at the Power 4 level, the thought process has always been you want to win all those weekends, but those first 3 weekends against non-conference competition is you are kind of trying to figure out who your starting 8 position players are going to be going into conference play and who your starting rotation is going to be. Usually your Friday guy's pretty locked down, but on a lot of teams, that Saturday-Sunday role is kind of up for grabs. And if one guy really struggles the first couple weekends against non-conference competition, you're going to make the assumption that he's probably not going to do well against your SEC, ACC competition, so you've got to make an adjustment. This just gives teams more time now to figure out, all right, who's our starting rotation going to be? Who's our starting 8 position players going to be? Who maybe we're going to have a position player split, righty, lefty guys, platoon type players. It just gives you more time to make that decision. So here's a big, and I'm going to pull this up now. Here's a big potential shift in the NIL department. I know a lot of you guys probably saw this, maybe not. So here from Darren Heatner, NCAA President Charlie Baker sought federal help for a Title IX national standard. Be careful what you wish for. Few big schools are preparing to make revenue sharing payments proportionally available to male and female athletes, more litigation. So right now, All right, Kane, let's see. I also did not see an update on the decision to add 2 extra fall games. No, there was an update, Canes. The update was it's not going to go through right now. That was kind of tabled for the future. And basically all the coaches said, we want it, but we're not going to, it's not a deal breaker for us. The number one priority was the extra time in January for practices. So they got that. They're not going to push too hard for the extra fall games, but consensus is that will come maybe even later this year for the next season. But for right now, they're not going to make a decision on it. I don't see why they wouldn't go through with it. But again, they're going to table that for a later date. Dusty Isaacs, afternoon, gentlemen. So big push here, guys. NCAA president is pushing for a national standard and getting Title IX involved with the NIL payments. Now, the question is going to be, Canes, he teaches at Miami, Darren Heatner. Nice. So this is from Ross Dillinger. Significant news out today from U.S. Department of Education, which classifies future revenue distributions from a school to an athlete for his/her NIL rights as financial assistance, which must be proportionally available to male and female athletes or risk violating Title IX. So what this means is that the revenue share that comes from opting in to the House settlement is going to have to be proportionally available to male and female athletes, meaning, again, your revenue sharing sports like football and basketball, women's basketball may be getting a lot more money than they originally thought, because football is going to take the vast majority of it, right? Men's basketball is going to take a large percentage of it, which means those two percentages are going to have to be made smaller to allow for the Title IX, or not violate Title IX. And so it could create some issues with this revenue share thing. As of right now, and this is what Mike Rooney gets into here, litigation was always inevitable in my opinion. 50-50 rev share a suit from football and hoops players, 80-20 revenue share a suit over Title IX. Question is NIL the same as revenue sharing? I haven't read the entire document yet, but that still feels blurry to me. And this is the question. Is this outside NIL stuff? A lot of schools are creating these, essentially these independent funds that alumni and other people can donate to, and you can donate and say, hey, I want this NIL money to go to baseball for them to utilize whichever way they want. Or you can just donate straight up and the school can decide to use it whichever way they want. But the question is, do those independent funds, is that going to be made to have to be proportional NIL for both football, men's sports, women's sports, etc.? And if that is the case, you're going to see a major hit to baseball NIL funding, or at least NIL payments to players. Because as of right now, for women's sports, unless you're a Caitlin Clark type player, or the girl from LSU, Reese, I don't know her first name. Dusty, you can help me out with that. I can't remember. Those type players in women's sports, got massive NIL deals, would get massive NIL deals now. But unless you were that type of player, or a famous player in a female sport, you weren't going to be getting a lot of NIL money. You could be a really good baseball player. It's not exactly kind of a household name or famous, and still get a really sizable NIL payment from a school. I gave you guys the example of a pitcher that I know of who was Angel Reese. Thank you, Zach. A pitcher from an ACC school that was kind of your average ACC pitcher, high 80s fastball, good command, 5 ERA, and got like a $55,000 NIL deal when he transferred. So nobody knows that guy's name. Nobody knows who he is, but that guy was getting $55,000. So now if it's made to where the payments to men's sports in NIL have to be equal, or proportionally equal to female sports, you're going to see a big hit to baseball NIL, because obviously football is getting the vast majority of NIL. Basketball is getting the vast, or not as much as football, but a large percentage of the male sports NIL. All that means They're not going to take payments away from football. They're not really going to. They're not going to try to take payments away from basketball, even though they will have to somewhat. But baseball will see a major hit in NIL if all of a sudden not just the revenue sharing, but the independent NIL has to be equalized as well. And I think that's where this is going. Who knows if it will pass, but it could be a major, major sting to not only the transfer portal, because think about this, guys, a lot of kids go in the transfer portal to get an NIL deal and a good amount of money. If you feel like in a couple years this goes through, and you know what am I gonna go in the transfer portal to get 10,000? Maybe that'll still work. There will be kids that will still take that, but you're not going to. Your average run-of-the-mill player who goes in the portal from a Power 4 school and was a decent player isn't going to be getting a $55,000-$60,000 NIL deal if this goes through. Didn't Braden Montgomery get a pretty big deal from A&M? Yeah, I mean, Zach, any guy of that caliber at an SEC school is probably getting, generally speaking, $200,000 or more, $150K or more. I know of players. I'll give you an example. A player of the year in a Northeast conference, a small mid-major conference that went to Fairfield, got $150,000 to transfer to an SEC school. And I know that because another coach who was recruiting him in the portal told me that. And the player said, listen, I would love to go to your school, but like this school's giving me this much money. And essentially, originally his offer was 75. And then he was still going to go to the other school for basically not nearly as much. And as soon as the school that offered him 75 found out like he was kind of leaning at that other school, they doubled it to 150. So that was a player who, again, a really good college player, but not a big time player at an SEC school or a Power 4 conference, and he got six figures. Seems like the big programs like LSU, A&M, Texas will be fine, but hurts the smaller schools trying to retain players. Yeah, I think you're right about that. Again, though, like let's say like Clemson's budget as of a year and a half ago or a year ago, from what I heard from multiple coaches, was about 1.3 in NIL money, 1.3 million in NIL money for their baseball team. There's no way it can stay at that level if all of a sudden the NIL payments to female athletes have to be the same or close to the same. It's just not possible because you're not going to take it away from your football team where they're paying these guys. Like the baseball, like at Clemson, who's got big time NIL money in college baseball, 1.3 million. Football players, like a single football player, a quarterback or a big time player is getting that or more in the Power 4 conferences. So it's just not in the same ballpark. Like the total NIL budget at a school with a big NIL budget for baseball isn't even as big as a one player on most football teams in the SEC or ACC. That's a quarterback or whatever. Like I told you guys, that I heard from a reliable source that the kicker on Georgia Tech's team was getting $250,000. The kicker, right? So the golden era of NIL from Dan Kerrigan, what's up, Dan, will last about 3 years in baseball. I mean, that potentially. I think the big issue, Dan, is if this Title IX thing moves forward and they make it a national standard and schools have to abide by it, the question is it just about the revenue share? You know, the 20 low 20.4 or whatever million that each school will get in revenue share if they opt into the house settlement. Is that only pertaining to the revenue share? Or is it also pertaining any NIL payments your athletes are getting? Now, the question is, I don't know how the NCAA can govern that because a lot of the NIL money comes from, third-party boosters, and not all of it comes from the independent fund that all these schools are setting up or have set up. So it's a big question mark. We'll have to wait and see. But if that does happen, and again, the NCAA has said in the past they don't want to get involved with kind of monitoring this, because again, even when before NIL was a thing, schools were still getting around the system and paying guys. They were paying their basketball players, they were paying their football players. Not many baseball players were doing it. Although way back in the day, I do know there was programs that would, the kid would work a camp, and instead of making like $250 for a 3-day weekend, he'd be getting like $2,500 or whatever it was. They'd find ways to pay these guys, off the books. But that kind of got cracked down on as well. So we'll have to wait and see. Kane says, what? Canes, I heard we had the highest NIL in the ACC. 1.38 Clemson would be bigger than ours. I mean, Canes, that could have changed, right? Last year, that was last summer, not this past summer, but so basically like a year and a half ago, that was the number going around. Talking to different coaches during the summer out at travel ball tournaments. If the thing that I would question, Canes, is if Miami has more than that, they seem to bring in a lot of guys from the portal that were not. They didn't seem to get any big time guys. So typically, if you have that big of an NIL budget, you're going to spend maybe 40% of that budget on a couple frontline arms or one big bat at a premier position. So like a shortstop or a catcher, center fielder, etc., or just like a big time star proven bat. But what most teams are doing is they're getting that, that Paul Skeens from Air Force. As an example, they're going after a guy who they think is a Friday night ace who's going to be a lockdown guy for them. So maybe that's true with Miami. Again, I don't know. I'm sure Clemson, if that was their budget a year and a half ago, it may be even higher now. But we just have to see. We're not sure. But the question remains is, what kind of impact is this going to have on college baseball NIL payments if it doesn't go through, or if it does go through, with the changes and everything like that. I think it was surprising that I don't know why, the change from 2 to 4 fall games against, off-campus competition. I don't know why that was tabled. Just to be honest, I don't know why that had to be tabled for later, because it seemed like a pretty straightforward proposal. Now, again, maybe the issue in this is, the schools would have to agree to it. So if your administration's like, we don't want to pay for the travel and the bus driver and the bus and the food, and if you're going way out of town, generally speaking, these fall games are from pretty local competition, so it's not like a massive travel. But that could be an issue. I just don't know why that had to be tabled. I don't know why that had to be tabled over for later. It seemed like that was almost more straightforward than the idea of making it more time to practice in the fall. I mean, that was the number one priority from coaches, from everything I'd heard, and it makes sense. Why would that had to be your number one choice, because you're just looking for more time for your pitchers to ramp up. So let's go. We're going to go into some more top 25 breakdowns. This one about Clemson. We're going to look at some of the ACC teams, and maybe tomorrow, or not tomorrow, but Monday, we'll look at some SEC teams. So this is obviously Clemson. Last year, a really good year, 44-16. 20-10 in the ACC. Eric Bafkett, since he's taken over, has just, dominated. Just come right in and put Clemson back in that top 10, top 5 program category. So looking at their projected lineup, Jacob Jarrell at catcher, junior, pretty good numbers last year. Nothing crazy. Not that many at bats, so you double these at bats, 12 home runs, 10 doubles, 34 strikeouts, 116 at bats. A little bit alarming, but not. You're expecting him to make an adjustment. Luke Gaffney, the transfer from Purdue, big time year last year. They're going to count on him. Jaron Purify, not great numbers last year, only 248, but again, you're going to expect these guys to make adjustments. A lot of strikeouts for a guy hitting 248 and not a lot of power, but a good defender. Andrew Kufo, same thing. Not a lot of at-bats at third base. Redshirt senior, didn't hit for any power. Especially in this era, guys, really weird to see guys hit for low digit home runs. I mean, in this era, almost every guy in a lineup you'd think is going to be hitting 10 plus. They must be seeing good things from him in the fall. Josh Pino, 296, 377, 535, 18 doubles, 11 home runs last year, 38 RBIs. Good amount of strikeouts as well. Dominic Listy, good numbers again, low home run total, transfer from Indiana State. 34 walks and 35 strikeouts though, or 34 walks and 35 strikeouts, really good on base guy. Not a lot of speed in this lineup, right? You're not going to expect Clemson to steal a lot of bases. Cam Canarella, this is the one that's weird to me. Obviously, he had a great year last year, 337, 16 doubles, 11 home runs, 0 stolen bases. Your speedy center fielder had 0 stolen bases, and I mean every team's offense is different. I mean, Eric, I don't know what Eric Backett's exact offensive strategy is, but they must really not like running into outs at all. But 0 stolen bases from Cam Canarella really surprised me when I was looking at this earlier. Tristan Becerra, 291, decent numbers, 7 home runs last year, only in 167 at bats, so that'll be higher. And then sophomore, did I zoom this in too much? Yeah, okay, there we go. Colin Priest, DH, 279, 11 home runs. So good amount of home runs across the board. Not as much power as you would think. Clemson's got to get to Omaha this year. Yeah. I mean, you think kind of that's the goal, right, for them. They're preseason ranked really high. I think he had a lower body injury last year, didn't he? I mean, I would say this, Zach, like, it's very hard as a center fielder. You got a lower body issue, like it's one thing to have like some tendonitis or some soreness in your legs. I mean, every speed guy or center fielder has that because basically every time you're moving in the game, you're running at 100%. So you put the ball in play, you're running at 100%. You're chasing down the ball in the gap, you're running at 100%. So if he did have a lower body injury, I mean, he played in 200. He had 283 at bats. So I mean, he played in every game. So I mean, it would surprise me if he had some kind of injury that was going to prevent him from stealing bases. I mean, again, your normal soreness, like I played with that my whole career. It's just surprising that he's almost only, except besides the catcher, he's the only one in the lineup that had 0 stolen bases last year. But this is going to be Clemson's real strength here. Aiden Knack, this kid was a stud last year as a freshman. I mean, look at his numbers: 5-1, 3.35 ERA, 83 innings pitched, 108 strikeouts to 29 walks. Watching him pitch last year, really good command, mid-90s fastball, big, sharp breaking ball, really good command. I believe is a split change. And just, I mean, as a freshman to come in and do what he did, lights out. Michael Gillen, the transfer from Seton Hall, had a 2.3 ERA last year, 39 innings pitched, 43 strikeouts to 14 walks. So look at these starting pitchers, guys, and what's the common denominator? Ethan Darden, and the left-handed pitcher. ERA wasn't great, but this is, again, a 5 in college baseball in this offensive climate is not as bad as you think. Like, if you had a 5 when I played, that was pretty bad. But you can imagine this, in like when I played, this would be like a low 4 ERA or a high 3. So again, pretty solid. 66 innings pitched, only 42 strikeouts, so he's not going to miss a lot of bats, but 15 walks. So one thing you notice for all 3 starting pitchers, I've told you guys this a bunch. College coaches, they want strike throwers. You cannot have guys on the especially starters, who are just kind of okay command guys. You're not going to give up a lot of free passes with any of these starting pitchers, so the other teams are going to have to earn their way on base. They're going to have to hit. Dane Moeller, freshman right-handed pitcher, really good pitcher out of Georgia. I think in the preview they said, he's probably going to be on the midweek starter at some point, or he's going to be like a bridge guy to get to your back end bullpen. And then your closer, 4-0 last year, was a really good freshman, 19 innings pitched, 26 strikeouts, 12 walks. So he's going to walk a little bit more guys, right? He's walking about 5 to 6 per 9, which is 1.5 per inning. So, you'd like that to be lower, but again, he's missing bats, low ERA. Never mind, he tore his labrum February 20th. Tore his labrum against Presbyterian, had shoulder surgery in the offseason. Yeah, I believe it was his throwing shoulder too, or maybe his non-throwing shoulder. So yeah, maybe they didn't want him stealing. I don't know if it was his brace arm, if he's sliding feet first, or definitely wouldn't want him sliding head first to torn labrum. So maybe that had something to do with it. So D1 baseball grading the Tigers, hitting 60. So they think they, really good hitting team. Power, slightly above average. Speed, not slightly above average. Defense, slightly above average. Starting pitching, 50. To me, I think that's a little bit low. You got a legit ace in Aiden Knack on the mound. And then you have Michael Gillen transfer. Albeit the numbers for him transferring from Seton Hall in a smaller conference with not as much competition. But again, expect him to do pretty well. Bullpen 55, experience intangible 60. Here's the question marks. The rotation behind Knack is a bit of a question mark. Transfer Michael Gillen was outstanding at the back of Seton Hall's bullpen last year, but needs to establish himself as a workhorse starter. Lefty Ethan Darden is a savvy veteran who knows how to pitch, but he doesn't miss a lot of bats. Dane Moeller is very talented, but he's a freshman, so there could be a learning curve. The lineup also has plenty of new faces after losing 5 everyday players from last year. We like their replacements, but all of them are facing a step up in competition to the ACC, so they need to prove themselves a bit at the top of this level. And I guess so Cantarella missed the entire fall recovering from surgery, which that's tough. Okay, so here he's an elite defensive center fielder with speed that plays on the base paths, although he did not steal last year out of caution for his shoulder. So I'm guessing with his shoulder, obviously you don't want him sliding head first, but it may be that may be on the arm where you kind of put that arm down to brace when you slide feet first. Although you could just slide, hands up here, but makes sense. Knack's calling card is his elite changeup, which generated 56% whiff rate last year, according to Synergy, ranking in the 98th percentile in college baseball. He has uncanny feel for the pitch, which ranged from 74 to 82 in our fall, with plus dive and deception. That makes his 90 to 93 fastball play up further, and he ran his heater into the mid-90s at times last spring. Yeah, I remember watching him hit around 95. He also mixed an effective 76-79 curveball last year, but he worked hard this fall to add a slider to his arsenal, and he's tinkered with the cutter. And listen, at Clemson, you got Jimmy Bellinger as your pitching coach, who's one of the best pitching coaches in college baseball. So expect these guys to all overperform. That's kind of been Jimmy Bellinger's calling card, is his guys really perform on the mound. And he doesn't put up with walks. He doesn't put up with guys, not throwing strikes. So, his guys typically do throw strikes, and he does a great job getting his guys ready to go. So I expect their pitching to kind of overperform what D1 baseball is saying here. So let's go to some more of these top 25 breakdowns. All right, NC State. You look at the ACC is full of teams in here. Not Canes. Zach, they play Oklahoma State twice, Arizona and Ole Miss to start in the Shriner Showdown. Yeah, so that's one of those things that what I was talking about earlier, where if you're in one of those kind of like round robin type tournaments, like the Shriner Showdown, I believe that's the one in Houston that they play at the Astros Stadium. You want your guys ready to go for that, because that's you're playing top 25 competition, and you come out of that weekend with 2 wins. RPI wise, you're in really good shape. So that's not a weekend where you're all right, let's figure out who our guys are. You want to be pretty sure who your guys are going into that. All right, so NC State. Catcher Alex Sosa. Numbers don't look too great, but he was a freshman last year, so you're gonna look for improvement. First baseman, transfer from VCU, 273, 385 slugging, 6 home runs. Man, not a lot of power in this lineup. Luke Nixon, 238 as a freshman, 4 home runs, a lot of walks. Ryan Jaros, transfer from Georgia Tech, was a bit, I would say this was a bit surprising for Georgia Tech because Ryan Jaros did get a good amount of playing time as a freshman and did well. He's kind of expected to be a power bat. He only got 47 plate appearances, right? He filled in some, but he did well. And so a lot of the coaches at Georgia Tech felt like he was going to stay because he was going to be in the starting lineup this coming year, expected. And so this was a big surprise for them. Good approach at the plate, 10 walks in 47 plate appearances, so over a 20% walk rate. But that was a blow to Georgia Tech, him transferring, because he was thought of as, he was going to be a starter his sophomore year, but goes to NC State. Justin DeCrisio, transfer. I don't know if this definitely is not the college he transferred from, unless he's named after his college is the same name as himself. Hit 308 last year, decent on base, and 229 plate appearances, 14 walks, not good. Doesn't strike out though. Only 3 home runs. I mean, look at the starting lineup, guys. Projected starting lineup, not a lot of home runs. Not a lot of home runs. Braden Frosman, transfer from Lincoln Trail Community College, no numbers on him. Trenton Lions, transfer from Ole Miss. Trenton Lions, 256, 326, and 43 plate appearances, 0 home runs, 1 double, 16 strikeouts to 4 walks. Josh Hogue, 314, 4 home runs and 163 at-bats. And then redshirt sophomore transfer DH, 273. I mean, offensive numbers not looking good for NC State. Unless a lot of these guys make big jumps, not looking like a big-time lineup. Dom Fritton, junior left-handed pitcher, in 17 appearances last year, 7.6 ERA, 72 innings pitched, 72 strikeouts, 47 walks. That number is really high. You don't want that kind of number for a starting pitcher. And this is the era we're in, guys. I mean, look at this. Your projected Friday starter had a 7.6 ERA last year as a sophomore. This is the offensive climate we're in. Heath Andrews, sophomore, only threw 9 innings last year, 8 walks, more walks than strikeouts, not good. And this is a preseason ranked 13 team. Ryan Marone, sophomore left-handed pitcher, 4.2, 3.97 ERA, in 10 starts he had 58 innings pitched, 46 strikeouts to 25 walks. So from the command department, just looking at these numbers, like command, not great on your starting pitchers, walking probably too many guys for starters. Potential starting pitcher number 4, junior right-handed pitcher, only threw 7 times last year, 11 innings, 5 walks, 8 strikeouts. So not a lot of strikeout guys on the starting rotation and a good amount of walks. And your closer, Derek Smith, 24 appearances last year as 8 saves, 29 innings pitched, 41 strikeouts, 11 walks. So big time arm for a closer. But certainly the pitching and the offense does not look great. Hitting 55. I don't understand this. And we'll read through the explanation, but 55 is supposed to be slightly above average, right? They have almost no power, and the batting averages aren't even that great. 230, 273, 238, 343 and 47 plate appearances, 308, 256, 314, 273. I mean, that's a if you took the numbers from last year, their team batting average is well under 300. Seems like their identity to start will be pitching and defense. Yeah, but I mean, the pitching doesn't even look like numbers-wise. Again, these guys could all have made big jumps in the fall, etc. We'll get into the explanation, but the pitching does not look like a strength. I have a few questions to ask you about what I saw yesterday when you get done. No, dude, put them in the chat, man. I'll answer them. Put them in the chat, Canes. I'll answer them. 50 power? How is this 50 power? I mean, this is 6, 9, 10, 14, 20, 26 home runs from last year. I know some of these guys didn't play that many at bats, but still, that's nothing. How are you giving a 50 power grade? Speed 55, defense 55, starting pitching 55, bullpen 70. So that's a big strength, having a really good bullpen. Experience intangible 55. So strengths, well, there's plenty of uncertainty with NC State's offense entering the season. We feel good about where the pitching staff stands. Dom Fritton was up to 94, 95 with his fastball in the fall and took a big step forward, while Heath Andrews is ultra talented and Ryan Marone had a great fall on the mound. Then there's the bullpen with two of the nation's best in Duden and Smith, along with a potential veteran weapon on Matt Willardson. Junior right-handed pitcher Andrew Schaffner, who has a quick arm and was up to 94, 95 with his fastball in the fall, is yet another solid weapon out of the pen. So if these guys all made big jumps, like things can change, right? Numbers will be better typically. You get better year by year. At least you should. And they're saying NC State should have one of its more talented pitching staffs in recent memory. We'll see if the offense can follow suit. So they're putting a lot of emphasis on the bullpen and that the starters will make big jumps. Question marks. Conventional wisdom suggests NC State will figure out how to score runs this spring. Productive offenses seem to be in the Pack's DNA. However, there's one thing I'm concerned about this season, and that's power production in such a power-heavy era of college baseball. The Pack does not have a single returning hitter who finished last season close to double-digit home runs. With that said, Sosa and Nixon are expected to take a big step forward in this department. McHugh can hit for power, and Lamphere is expected to produce from a power standpoint. The only projected starter who finished last season with double-digit homers is Frostman, who did so at a junior college. Again, this is not a total deal-breaker because more playing time typically equals more production, but if you're poking holes into a team like NC State, the lack of evident power is striking. Canes. A pitcher throwing 86 miles per hour when he's usually 90, 91. What do you think is the reason for that? That happened day one when I wasn't there. Is that something of not working the offseason or overworking? Sometimes it could be like first time throwing back live Canes or whatever. You're kind of easing into it. So it could just be like not trying to go too hard day one. But certainly it also could be, a drop of 4 or 5 miles an hour would be a little concerning. I would say it's probably not from overwork. If anything, it's from not working enough in the winter. And because of that, you're taking it easy day one, or your arm's just not in shape. But 4 to 5 mile an hour decrease, a little alarming, I would say. But okay. Now we'll go into another team. I would say NC State, man, like D1 baseball is banking on the starting pitchers making big jumps. Because listen, like, the comment of, oh, well, he's throwing 94, 95. It's like, that's great, but he threw 94, 95 last year and he had a 7 ERA because he walked a lot of guys. And like 94, 95 is, don't get me wrong, it's above average in the Power 4 conferences, but guys are seeing that more and more now. So it's not as a weapon as maybe 15 years ago. I mean, and even when I was playing, I mean, I want to just dispel something that a lot of people are like, well, the people are throwing harder than ever. Guys, when I played, Danny Hultzen was your Friday guy at Virginia. He was 94, 96 from over here. Our starting pitchers were all, Mark Pope was low 90s that could command 5 pitches. Jed Bradley was mid 90s. Buck Farmer was low to mid 90s. Marcus Stroman was a starter for Duke, and he was throwing it mid 90s to upper 90s. Carlos Rodon was throwing it mid high 90s. Like, every team had guys like that. So don't believe the people that are like, oh, guys are throwing harder than ever now. Everyone's had arms that have done that forever. So now we're going to Wake Forest lineup. All right, now Canes. Now, what about this? A pitcher in the fall throwing 89, 90, and the first pitch he throws is 94 and is sitting 92, 94. What is the reason for that? This is a fifth-year senior transfer strength and conditioning coach? Potentially, but here's the thing. The thing, Canes, about velocity is it tends to show up randomly when it increases. So it could be a host of factors. Could be he was working a lot on velocity over the winter break and it just kind of showed up. But a lot of times guys put in work for 6 to 8 months and they don't see an increase in velocity. And then all of a sudden, bam, it just shows up. Could be his arm's really fresh right now. And he just saw a spike in velocity, but it's hard to say. With velocity spikes and decreases, a lot of times it's really hard to figure out why it happens. All right, so Wake Forest last year, kind of a disappointment for Wake Forest. Finished at 15-15, and they were projected to finish or to do a lot better than that. Projected lineup: Jimmy Keenan, transfer from St. John's, 335, 12 home runs, 21 doubles, big power bat, 67 strikeouts. Cade Lewis, transfer from Butler, 377, 10 home runs, 12 doubles. Antonio Morales, second base, 294, 406, 494, 3 home runs. Dalton Wentz, freshman, no numbers on him. Merrick Houston, 326, 433, 16 doubles, 8 home runs, really good defender, more walks and strikeouts. Jack Winay, 297, 20 bombs, 18 doubles, 37 walks, 61 strikeouts. Ethan Conrad, 389, 18 doubles, 9 home runs. Matt Scannell from Princeton, 276, 12 doubles, 8 home runs. Javar Williams, 228, 395, 298, 5 doubles, 0 home runs as your DH. That would be a little bit weird. He was throwing strikes as well. He looked really solid. That's good. That's big time for you guys. Ethan Conrad will battle for ACC Player of the Year. You think so, Canes? But this is what this is what your like top 15 caliber teams offense should look like. Now look at this. Look how many guys are hitting like 370, 389. The offensive climate is just ridiculous, but look at the difference in home runs between Wake Forest and NC State. For pitchers, and Wake is going to pitch. Matthew Dallas, transfer from Tennessee, left-handed pitcher, 15 appearances last year, only 2 starts, but 17 innings pitched, 22 Ks, 4.76 ERA. Logan Lunsford, transfer from Missouri, right-handed pitcher, 6.9 ERA, 14 appearances, 13 starts, 60 innings pitched, 53 strikeouts. Duncan Marston, freshman, maybe pitching on the weekend. Blake Morningstar, sophomore, 7.5 ERA, 29 innings pitched, 38 Ks, 16 walks. Closer, Matt Bedford, 4.65, transfer from Notre Dame, 62 innings pitched, 40 strikeouts. With Corey Mascara as your pitching coach, these guys are all going to make jumps, right? They're all going to perform better. At least that's been his track record. Canes, I watched him in the Cape. He was so good, it was insane, and he steals so many bags. In the Cape, I saw him steal 5 bags against Cuvées' team. Nice. Yeah, 16 stolen bases last year, but probably will increase from the previous year. Grading the Demon Deacon. So look at the difference. NC State is ranked higher than Wake, but NC State has higher ratings in everything. And their bullpen's a 70, just like NC State. 60, 60, 60, 60 defense. Starting pitching, 55. It feels crazy to suggest that Wake could actually be a better team in 25 after losing 3 of the top 10 picks in the 24 draft. Chase Burns, Nick Kurtz, and Dynamo Seaver King. But Coach Tom Walter believes this club is dramatically deeper than last year's. There's still loads of high-end talent, as evidenced by Wake's 7 players. Or by Wake's 7 players on D1 Baseball's top 150 college prospect list. Question marks. The starting pitchers must prove themselves. Matt Dallas logged just 17 innings as a freshman at Tennessee last year, and fellow transfer Logan Lunsford, the leader for the Saturday job, posted an ERA close to 7 at Missouri last year. Freshman Duncan Marston has elite talent and starred in the fall, but he's nonetheless a freshman. Blake Morningstar has huge stuff and clearly turned a corner this fall, but he's coming off a 7.45 ERA as a freshman, so the ability is there with this group, but the track record is not. In the lineup, Kurtz has a strong claim as the best player in program history, and Wake must get used to life without him after 3 incredible seasons. The biggest overriding question is this: can a team that underachieved as a preseason number 1 last year really be a better club a year later? So they were preseason number 1 last year and went 15-15 in the ACC, if that tells you how deep the ACC is. After losing 5 players drafted in the top 4 rounds, including those 3 top 10 picks, we certainly believe there's a solid chance it plays out that way, but it's reasonable to harbor some skepticism. Merrick Houston is the best defensive shortstop in America with superb range, instincts, and hands and arm strength, but he's also coming on strong offensively. He made a huge leap from freshman year to sophomore year, and Walter said he's made just as big a leap from sophomore year to junior year. After spending the summer in Team USA and on the Cape, building a roster around a premier player at one of the most important up-the-middle positions is an incredible luxury. Jack Winay came into this as a major power threat as a sophomore last year, hitting 20 homers and slinging 649. To offer Kurt some production in the lineup, he should make a run at All-America honors as a junior. So should Marist transfer Ethan Conrad, who won D1 Baseball's Summer Breakout Prospect Award after tearing up the Cape. A physical left-handed hitter with a high-end hit tool, serious power, and good speed, Conrad gives off Colton Cowser vibes. So, I mean, this is what you expect, like a top 15 team to look like. I don't get how Wake Forest is ranked behind NC State from reading those breakdowns. I don't know if you guys agree, but those breakdowns seemed to me that Wake Forest would be ranked higher than NC State. All right, we're going to go into a few more of these. So Duke, preseason number 11. Macon Winslow, 250 last year as the catcher, 6 doubles, 4 home runs. Jake Hyde, transfer from Georgetown, 297, 20 doubles, 13 home runs. Jake Berger from Harvard, 288, 7 doubles, 1 home run as the second baseman. Ben Miller, 360, 18 doubles, 15 home runs, only 17 walks. I don't understand how some of these guys don't have more walks, because the strike zone is so much tighter now in college baseball. You could almost take every pitch and you'd walk like 50 times in a year. Maybe more than that, probably. Ben Miller, redshirt senior, 360, 18 doubles, 15 home runs. Wallace Clark, 285, 11 doubles, 5 home runs. Ben Rounds, another transfer from Harvard, 403, 16 doubles, 8 home runs. Tyler Albright, 222 in center field, 2 doubles, 1 home run, and just 61 plate appearances. 20 strikeouts to 5 walks is a little bit tough. AJ Garcia, 305, 14 doubles, 14 home runs. And Sam Harris, DH, who had 6 plate appearances last year, so numbers really don't matter. From Zach, that's why we shouldn't have rankings until a month into the season. Yeah, listen, you got to provide content for the fans. The preseason rankings are great to create conversation and everything like that, and bring people to their website, so that they're going to do it. But certainly you're right, Zach, that the preseason rankings mean virtually nothing, because like it said about Wake, they were preseason number 1 last year and really underachieved. With like they said, 3 top 10 picks on your team, and you went 15-15 in the ACC. So the ACC's tough, man. It's tough. The SEC's tough. Doesn't matter how good you're supposed to be. So here's the key for Duke. Now look at these numbers. Andrew Healy, left-handed pitcher, 376, 12 starts, 40 innings pitched, 42 Ks, only 17 walks. Kyle Johnson, left-handed pitcher, 4.38 ERA, 49 innings pitched on 10 starts, 53 Ks, 19 walks. James Talon, another left-handed pitcher, 529, 24 appearances in just 1 start, 32 innings, 37 Ks, 18 walks. Not as good numbers there. Reed Easterly from Yale, redshirt senior, another left-handed pitcher, 4.4 ERA, 13 innings pitched, 11 games started, 75 innings, 69 strikeouts, 20 walks. And closer David Bovert maybe, 2.1 ERA and 18 appearances, 25 innings pitched, 26 Ks, 10 strikeouts. So not a lot of walks on these starting pitchers. A lot of left-handed pitchers. So the question is going to be this: these lefties all better have pretty good change-ups, because if you face a right-handed dominant lineup with all lefties, typically you want 1-2 guys as lefties in your starting rotation, just so you're mixing up the looks. Now again, they're going to be really good against lefties, but the question is that many left-handed starters going to hurt Duke? And you're going to pitch your best guys, right? You're not just going to throw a guy in there to be a starter because he's right-handed pitcher if he can't handle it. But I remember my freshman year or junior or sophomore year facing Wake, and they had all 3 left-handed pitchers, and they all kind of threw the same pitches and looked the same. And it was kind of like, even if you're a left-handed hitter, you see that many lefties look the exact same, you get used to it really fast, and it's not the weapon that it usually kind of turns out to be. So from Duke, hitting 60, power 55, speed 45, defense 55, starting pitching 55, bullpen 60, intangibles 60. Team breakdown, left-handed bats and left-handed arms. Coach Chris Pollard said this fall that he grew frustrated a few years ago by his team's lack of impact lefties in the lineup and on the mound, so he made a concerted effort to build future rosters around high-end lefties. Well, they did it. Zach, curious question. How does a player from Harvard that didn't put up great numbers against lower competition project to the Power 4 level? How do coaches evaluate the player? So this is what I would say. Harvard, this guy hit 403. This guy hit 288, maybe a really good defender. He's got a good approach, 18, 21 walks, but what you're looking at is this guy's very experienced, right? Probably a lot of at-bats at Harvard. So what you're banking on is, again, you're probably watching these guys in summer ball. So if he performed well in summer ball, you're like, okay, we want him. But here's the thing. These transfer guys, what all coaches are finding out is, like, it doesn't matter where they're coming from. Their numbers are going to be pretty similar at the Power 4 level. Like, no one's making the assumption anymore that, oh, he was at D3 or D2, his numbers are going to go down. A lot of these guys get better when they get to the Power 4. They're experienced. Like, they don't play with, like, the kind of nerves that a lot of freshmen play with. And again, they might have seen him in summer ball and thought, okay, this guy is really good defender at second. The bat plays, like, we can make him better. We're going to bank on it. Mission accomplished, says D1 Baseball. This year's starting lineup figures to include 5 left-handed hitters plus a switch hitter, a group highlighted by sluggers Jay Kide and AJ Garcia, and all of Duke's top 4 starting rotation candidates are southpaws, all with serious stuff. Overall, Duke's lineup should be well-stocked with tough outs from top to bottom, with a nice, powerful core in the middle and standout veteran playmakers on the left side of the infield. And the pitching staff is extremely deep with some quality power right-handers in the bullpen to complement an abundance of quality lefties in the pen as well. What did I say, guys? Theoretically, question marks, a righty-heavy lineup should match up well against Duke's all-lefty rotation, and it's true that righties were more than 300 OPS points better against the lefties against both Andrew Healy and James Talon. But Kyle Johnson, who owns a wicked changeup, was actually better against righties. So what did I say? I mean, they better have good changeups. It's also worth noting that Duke has the bullpen depth to play the matchups against anybody. Offensively, the Blue Devils have less power than they did a year ago after losing Zach Morris, Logan Bravo, Devin Obie, and Alex Stone. The Devils still have plenty of punch, but they're unlikely to approach last year's 115 homer total. Pollard acknowledged this fall that his 2025 squad will have to grind out more at-bats and find other ways to manufacture offense. Of course, they have the personnel to execute that strategy, and so this offense might wind up being just as dangerous because it will be better suited to adapt when the long ball dries up. But the team's lack of burners on the base paths could undermine that approach a bit. Their numbers will go down, though, at least by .20, .30. Canes, you can't make that assumption because I've seen guys transfer from D3s to Power 4 schools and their numbers go up. You're right about some of them, but some of them, their numbers will be better. And that's what everyone's kind of found out with the transfer portal is, like, if you see the swing and you watch him in summer ball and, like, the guy looks good, like, he's going to be good because he's not a freshman that's never played at the college level. Still, though, I think D1 Baseball is right. I think a right-handed heavy lineup is going to match up really well against Duke. And that's going to be the question is how do their lefties perform against righties? Because as they said, 2 of the left-handed starters, righties hit 300 OPS points higher, which is massive. Right, you're talking from 800 to 1100 OPS. That's crazy. Against SEC, ACC weekend arms. I mean, Dan, again, this is what I'm trying to tell you guys. That would be the consensus wisdom would be, oh, well, this guy's coming from Harvard or he's coming from a lower tier D1 and this and that. And again, Duke could be bringing that guy in from Harvard because he's a really good defender at shortstop. He's going to make all the double play turns. I mean, that's a big quality a lot of people undermine is the ability that your second baseman has to turn a double play. Because when your second baseman is not great at turning double plays, you get killed. because you hit that, the guy hits that ground ball and you think you're out of the inning, and all of a sudden your guy can't turn it well, and you're not out of the inning, and the next guy comes up, hits a bomb or a double, and 2-run score. So, I mean, they could be saying, you know what, his offense is going to be okay, but his defense is so good, we want him. There's a lot of factors that go into this. But I will say this, like, a lot of these guys that are transferring from Division II and Division III and lower level D1s, they're transferring to the Power Fours and performing really well. And a good percentage of them are performing better. I mean, look at the Kyle Lodice from Augusta, D2 in Augusta, who's at Georgia Tech now, and he's projected to be one of the top, maybe a top 3 rounder at Georgia Tech. So his numbers are probably going to be similar or better at Georgia Tech. Number 9, Florida State. And I get that's cherry picking a guy who's a pro prospect, like, you know, I get it, but still, that's the consensus now. Florida State, Jackson West, 2-7. A lot of newcomers in this lineup, by the way, right? Some JUCO guys without numbers, but Dan, the winning recipe does have many ingredients. Yeah, I mean, the best example is this one. My dad was GM of the Atlanta Braves, and Dan Uggla was, you know, first couple of years was really good, hitting a lot of home runs, and then he started to struggle. And I was actually in the minor leagues at the time with the Braves, and I remember calling my dad because there was a guy in AAA who he had hit like Tommy LaStella. You guys probably remember that name. He would hit 350 in AA, and then he was hitting 350 in AAA and just raking. And I remember asking my dad, I was like, Dad, you know, how long until LaStella gets the call up? Because Uggla's struggling, he's not hitting home runs. And my dad said, Kyle, if I thought he could turn all the double plays, he would have been up here a month or two ago. And he said, with our pitching staff, as good as it is, every double play has to be a double play. Like, that's what's going to lose us games. I know he's probably going to come up and be a better hitter. And even again, that jump from AAA to the big leagues is a big one. But he was more concerned that he had a second baseman that could turn every double play. And Uggla was, you know, he kind of underrated as a defender. He was really good at turning a double play and really quick with his transfer. But that one thing held Tommy LaStella a little bit longer in the minor leagues. And he ended up getting to the big leagues and, you know, playing for a good amount of time in the show. But that one issue kept Dan Uggla up there, even though every fan in the game was like, bring up LaStella. Uggla can't, he's terrible offensively. And it's like, well, that's not the only thing. That's not the only place that a player can bring value. So Florida State, Jackson West, 274, 3 home runs. Miles Bailey, freshman, probably going to be a stud. Drew Farrow, junior, 286, 6 home runs. Cal Fisher, 273, 5 home runs and just 83 at-bats. Alex Lodice is Kyle Lodice's brother. The guy that's at Georgia Tech now is Kyle Lodice. 281 shortstop, 9 home runs. Both brothers are really good shortstops, 14 doubles. Chase Williams, transfer from Northwest Florida State. Max Williams, center fielder, 311, 384, 11 doubles, 14 home runs. Just 19 walks, though, and 54 strikeouts. That's tough. You are kind of seeing that now more in college baseball. Just like every lineup has 3 or 4 guys that the walk to strikeout ratio is pretty terrible. Just play discipline in general for your average college player seems to be getting worse. And it doesn't make sense because the strike zone is like this now, and it used to be this. So theoretically, if plate discipline was the same, because, like, guys, again, do not believe the people that are like, the stuff is just so much better now in college baseball. It's not. It's not. Maybe a tick better, right? Maybe, 5% better, but it's not so much better that, like, well, these guys, like, the stuff's so much better, they strike out. It's like, no, the strike zone's like 4 inches smaller now, too, on every side, except for up. But that 2 inches, 3 inches down used to be a strike every time. 4 inches off the plate, strike every time. 2 or 3 inches in, strike every time. Bladen Plain, transfer from Pensacola State, junior. Hunter Carnes, freshman. So a lot of question marks in this lineup. Just guys from JUCO. Again, they don't have the numbers on here, but those guys will probably be fine. They're JUCO bandits from the Panhandle. Zach, I saw Plain and Wesner play several times last year in the Panhandle Conference. Both are quality bats. Yeah, I mean, those guys, again, the Panhandle Conference is pretty much the best junior college conference in the country. So those numbers are going to transfer. And I'm assuming they performed really well, even though they don't have them up here. Now, this is another, Florida State's probably maybe the best arm in the country. Starting pitcher Jamie Arnold, going to be a top pick in the draft. Just look at these numbers. 2.9 ERA, 18 starts, 105 innings, 159 strikeouts to 26 walks. Is that good? When you have a starting pitcher this good on Friday night, you basically can take it to the bank every Friday, right? And he was averaging 18 starts. He was averaging, what, 6 innings a start? So he's going 6 innings a start. That probably will increase a little bit this year. The problem for him is he strikes out so many guys that his pitch count's going to be high. But I mean, this guy's going to play. You're going to be banking on a win every Friday night with the best pitcher in the college baseball as your Friday night starter. Joey Vellini, transfer from South Florida, 4.4 ERA, just 3 starts last year, 14 appearances, 28 innings pitched, 26 Ks. Wes Mendez from Ole Miss, sophomore left-handed pitcher, only 2 starts last year, 6.8 ERA, 43 strikeouts in 31 innings, though 19 walks. Evan Crest, Jacksonville, 2-4, 6.6 ERA, 15 starts, 68 innings pitched, 74 strikeouts. So they got swing and miss guys. They got swing and miss stuff. Closer Peyton Prescott from Jacksonville, 6.05 ERA, 16 appearances, 55 innings, 46 strikeouts. So that's a little alarming. Canes, Arnold's is the best arm. Saw him twice last year. It's electric. Yeah, I mean he's insane. I mean he's definitely the best pitcher in the country. And it's just like, man, if you have a workhorse on Friday night that can go 7 innings and you save your bullpen and you give up a 2.9 ERA in this era, again, I mean that's like having a 1 ERA when I played, a 1-something ERA. 3 runs is almost never going to get you a win in this era. So if your starting pitcher is averaging a 2.9 ERA or ERA, you feel like you're in pretty good hands. And then Peyton Prescott from Jacksonville. So the hitting 50, power 45. So the offense is going to be a big question mark. But the pitching behind Arnold, I think, is a question mark as well. But you have such a good Friday night starter that you're going to be projected to win a lot of games, because if you can beat the other team's best guy, then it's Saturday and Sunday now are kind of just toss-ups. Bullpen 60. So Florida State is going to be extremely athletic and defensive-minded in its position player group. The junior middle infield duo of second baseman Drew Farrow and shortstop Alex Lodice is extremely solid. Sophomore Chase Williams and junior Max Williams give the Seminoles 2 very rangy outfielders, and junior catcher Jackson West is a premium defensive player at his position. What could help take this defense to another level, however, is if sophomore third baseman Cal Fisher, who is looking to move from part-time player to lineup regular, and freshman first baseman Miles Bailey end up being as good defensively as the coaching staff thinks they will be. The bullpen, and this is another great point to bring up for you guys. There are a lot of guys who in inter squads and stuff, they look great defensively, and then the games start and there's like pressure to make every play, and it's just different when there's the games count and every game is must win. And again, in inter squad, you're not playing a must win game. You're trying to impress coaches, but there isn't that added pressure of like, we're trying to get to the College World Series, we're trying to win the conference, we got to win every game. Some guys, that pressure all of a sudden, that just kind of makes them hesitate. They just don't play as well defensively. So that's why you see like coaches think they're going to be good defensively. You just don't know until the season starts with some of these guys. The bullpen is quietly very strong. Question marks. The FSU coaching staff acknowledges that the team will simply have to find different ways to score runs this season because the lineup isn't going to be as physical as it was a season ago. The top 4 home run hitters from last season are gone, with that quartet making up 81 of the 131 round trippers for the Seminoles in 2024. 131 home runs. Guys, when I played, I think as a team, if we hit like 60, you were like, man, like my junior year, we had the best offense in the country. Let's see if I can actually pull this up. See if I can find this, guys. You're going to laugh when you see this. Okay, here we go. All right, yes, I found it. Okay. Just look at these numbers. We had the best offense in the country, or like top 3 offense in the country. Let me pull this up for you guys. You're going to laugh at this, okay? Okay. So this is in the dead ball era. Ball went nowhere, okay? As a team, and again, one of the best offenses in the country. 14 home runs. I hit 2, right? Big time power guy. 16 plus 17 is 33. Look, I'm good at math. 34, 37, 40, 45, 51, 54, 57, 58 home runs. Now, our opponent's average home runs hit was 40. Look at that. Are you guys laughing? Are you guys laughing right now? This was like one of the premier offenses in college baseball. Our team batting average was 304. So think about that for a second. I'll highlight the 98 hits. I'll highlight the 98 hits just so you guys can see how good I was in college. 98 hits, okay? But is this crazy? This guy Daniel Palka, he hit 27 home runs his rookie year in the big leagues. 27 home runs. So we were one of the best power hitting teams in the country. We hit 58. Florida State's team last year hit 131. This was he was third in the country in home runs with 17. He probably would be like 60th now. Yeah, this is when every game was Friday night was a 1-0, 2-1 game. And your Kane says that's crazy. Zach says that's when every game was 2-1 or 3-2. 100%. Dude, it was like it was Buck Farmer against Stroman. Buck Farmer was our ace. He's pitched in the big leagues 10 years now. 2.78 ERA, 113, 100 innings pitched, 122 strikeouts. Look, he was a horse, 113 innings pitched. So this was like 2-1 games. So we had 58 home runs to 40. Now let's see the other year. Let's see 2010, 2011. All right. Same with this team. Let's see how many. This team was a good power hitting team too in that era. 10, 5, 16, 20 or 22, 25, 37, 41, 46, 47, or 48 home runs. Our opponent's average, guys, look at this. Opponent's average that year was a 231 batting average and 25 home runs. Can you guys look at this? This was the first year that the dead bats came into play. So you guys think I'm exaggerating. Oh, the bats are juiced or the balls are juiced. And I get this on social media all the time. They're like, guys are just stronger now. Guys are just better now. What? Our opponent's average, the majority of 30 of these games were against ACC teams. Our opponent's average was 25 home runs. 25. Do you guys now understand when I tell you that the balls are so juiced and the bats are so much better, it's not even a comparison? That's insane. Yeah, I actually need to do a video on this, and I think it'll get people. I need to do a video on this. Maybe I'll do a video today about it, and just go over how crazy these numbers are. Because again, this was I think there was probably some teams in the 60 range, 65, but we were considered a really, again, look at our team batting average. We were like one of the best hitting teams in the country at 303. Our opponent's average was 231. And look at the starting pitchers. Mark Pope, he's now the head coach at Wesleyan High School in Georgia, private school. Look at this starting rotation. Mark Pope, Golden Spikes Award finalist. Look at the innings pitched. 113 innings pitched, 91 hits, 24 walks in 113 innings pitched, 88 strikeouts. Wasn't a strikeout guy, but man, he could keep you off balance. Buck Farmer, 2.80 ERA. Like I said, 10 years in the big leagues. 106 strikeouts and 31 walks. Jed Bradley, First round pick, played in the big leagues, 98 innings pitched, 106 strikeouts, 31 walks. We were good. We were national seed this year. We went 22-8 in the ACC. We were nasty. We were really nasty. Lost in the regional, choked in the regional. So, yeah. Okay, let's go back to Florida State. Now that you guys know that I'm not this old man yelling at the clouds. Canes, can I send you a video and can you tell me if the ball is juiced? Yeah. Just DM'd you a video of a home run from yesterday's practice and where the ball was located. Okay, let me look. We'll pull this up so everyone can see. Canes, this is what I would say. I don't need to pull it up because I don't know. You can't really tell. But if a ball barely gets out of the park now, it would have been a routine fly ball when I was playing. That's what I'll say. Routine fly ball. If a ball gets out by like 10 feet, it's like basically a routine fly ball when I was playing. I saw y'all play at FSU one of those years. Yeah, so that would have been my junior year. And we actually won game 1 against Lee Brandt's son. I forget his first name. Beat him, and then we ended up losing the last 2. All right, so star power. Did I see the TrackMan at the end? I didn't see the TrackMan at the end. Let me see. $99. Yeah, I mean, I think that is a classic Canes of got jammed way inside, but balls are juiced. That's what that was, 100%. Okay. Brandon Lee Brandt, yep. Brandon Lee Brandt, yep. That's who we played. Junior left-hander Jamie Arnold is arguably the best pitcher in college baseball. Texas A&M's Ryan Prager and UC Santa Barbara's Tyler Bremer are the primary guys who you might argue otherwise, and he could be the first pitcher taken in an MLB draft. He's coming off a season in which he had a 2.9 ERA, a 2.24 opponent batting average, and 159 strikeouts in 105 innings. His stuff is absolutely electric. His primary combination consists of fastball that is up to 97 and a mid-80s slider that had a 41% whiff rate, but it'll also show a usable mid to high 80s changeup. Yeah, so I mean, guys, the ACC is going to be super deep this year. Again, it's going to be interesting to see some of these teams that aren't like as highly thought of, like my Georgia Tech guys. I mean, they're in the top 40 according to Perfect Game, so certainly they're still one of the best teams in the country. Miami as well, but it's going to be interesting to see which of the teams that are outside the top 25 in the ACC are going to find their way into the top 25 as the season progresses. I do think Georgia Tech, having watched them a little bit in the fall and reading the reports and talking to the coaches, they feel like they have a very strong core of freshman arms that are going to be good right away. That's the big question mark for them, is how many of those freshman arms are actually going to be able to perform in the spring. Because one thing you know about James Ramsey as a hitting coach at Georgia Tech is he's always put out a really good offense, even if people have expected it to be a down year. He's always found a way to have a really productive offense. So the offense is not really questioned at Georgia Tech anymore, but they really feel like, in talking to Matt Taylor, he felt like they've got a really good, strong core of freshmen coming in. They have even better arms coming in next year, but he feels like a lot of these freshmen are going to be able to produce right away. Obviously, cross your fingers if you're a Georgia Tech fan, but I think the ACC is going to be even deeper than what is expected this year. It's going to be coming down to pitching for us. Kane says, "What is a normal velo for freshman arms?" I think now, especially for a right-handed pitcher in the Power 4, most of your freshmen are gonna, they're gonna come in and people are gonna say they throw 94, but they're gonna be like 88 to 92. That's your typical right-handed pitcher. Your typical lefty is going to be like 86 to 90, 87 to 91, right? Going to sit in the high 80s. But you're going to want your right-handed pitchers to be comfortably sitting 90 to 92. But they're going to hit a little bit below that. That's kind of what you want. All right, guys, remember, if you want help with recruiting and want to work with Elite Sports Advising and one of our advisors, scan that QR code, fill out the form. I have to say the same for us. I'm actually very happy with that. Our recruiting coordinator brought in after was I saw yesterday. Oh, you're happy with what the recruiting coordinator brought in after what you saw yesterday. Yeah, I get it. And that's the thing. Some guys are going to be undervalued, and you're going to find those guys that people think aren't as good, and then they end up being ballers. We had 2 freshmen sitting 94 yesterday. That's really good. That's really good. All right, guys, that's going to be it for today. Be on the lookout for the video coming out later today.